Hey, welcome back. Glad you joined, or if this is your first time, I'm host Sean Ritter. This is Tailgate Talk, a different look at an outdoors show. A topic that came up a few weeks ago on the podcast and our normal radio show was the look at fishing tournaments and the formats of fishing tournaments. There's been a few different wrinkles added in years recently. One of them that I mentioned is head-to-head fishing, a new way that pits angler against angler in a shortened time period, different lakes, and how this all shakes out to be what is possibly one of the most fun fishing tournaments you can watch. What exactly is head-to-head fishing? Where did the idea come from? Well, we've got the man behind everything, Brian Keller, who also happens to be the owner and CEO of The Real Shot in Appleton, who's joining us on the show this week to talk all about that. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about different fishing tournament formats and how people take in different outdoors competitions. And I mentioned this new fishing format called head-to-head fishing. And I thought to myself right away, I got to get Brian Keller on because you're first off the owner and CEO of The Real Shot in Appleton, which is, I want to call it a fishing store, but you guys are so much more than fishing, right?
Yeah, we do. We started out as a fishing store back when you and I first met in Oshkosh.
Yeah.
That's probably going on 11 years ago now.
Damn, it's been that long?
Yeah, dude. We don't even have that store in Oshkosh anymore.
Yeah, I know. You guys are kind of one store in Appleton, and then you guys are a part of what in Sheboygan?
Yep. So we've got the one store in Appleton. We've got kind of satellite store in Sheboygan, and then big online presence now too. So yeah, it's been 11 years since you and I first met.
I was going to bring that up and say, as far as online stores go, you guys have got to have the best as far as searchability. If you're looking for one specific product to be able to search it out, that you can just type in half of what it is and it'll show up the things. It is so many places can't find it. Oh, because I didn't spell something right, you know?
Right, for sure. Yeah, no, that's good to hear. I appreciate that. We've put a lot of time and energy into our website and the searching, and with the fishing products in particular, there's so many brands and there's so many, and there's a lot of stuff with little nuances and little changes here and there, and there's the craziest names ever, right? So with, when you're trying to come up with 700 different colors for a walleye lure, for instance, some of these names start getting kind of crazy, and it's really hard for the general public to know what those names all are, right? Purple tiger, and then they got purple descent tiger, and then they got sunrise tiger. It's well, what the, So trying to come up with a way where we can actually kind of make that user-friendly on the fishing side has been a challenge, so it's good to hear that you like it.
Yeah, I'm gonna circle back to more stuff about The Real Shot and everything online coming up here, but really what I wanted to get to was head-to-head fishing and what exactly it is. You're kind of the mastermind behind this whole concept.
Yeah, for sure. So just a real quick background, because I think it's important to what we're talking about. So I actually started professional walleye fishing straight out of high school. I actually almost missed my high school graduation for a fishing tournament. And through the 18 years of pro walleye fishing that I did, I always, there was always the comparison to the bass world.
Yep.
And everything in the bass world was bigger, better. The manufacturers all thought it was bigger and better. And it just didn't really sit well with me. And I just, something had to change. Well, people always look at, there's a lot of different ways you can look at change, right? So you can look at little changes, big changes. Well, the way I looked at it is I think fishing is, I tried to compare it to other sports. Now I'm a sports junkie, okay? So I'm a football coach. I spent 12 years as a high school varsity football coach. I spent 8 years as a varsity baseball assistant and a JV head coach. Coached my son's little league baseball and all that kind of good stuff. But I'm an absolute sports junkie, and I looked at other sports and I go, why is football so popular? Why is baseball popular? Why is basketball popular? Why is golf popular? Why is, I don't golf, but millions and millions of people watch people golf. I'm well, why do they do that?
You mentioned golf, Brian. I want to ask you this because I'm curious. I bet you're just like me. I don't golf, so to me, watching golf is so boring. But
100%.
I can watch 8 hours of fishing.
Yep. No, I'm 100% the same way. I don't golf. It conflicted with fishing for me. So I never had the time to practice it to get good at it, right? And I'm the kind of guy that I like to be competitive in what I'm doing and everything that I do. And if I can't be good at something, I'd just rather not do it, right? So that's just where my head was at. So I was looking at all these sports all the time, and when you're a professional fisherman, you're traveling country, North Dakota, out to Ohio, you're going all over the place. You got a lot of time behind the wheel staring at the highway, and I was just always thinking about like what makes people tick? Why is there not this drive behind walleye fishing? Because when you're out there doing it, there's people everywhere doing it.
Yeah.
Which is like golf, right? Like you said, if you golf, you watch golf. If you're into fishing, you'll watch fishing. So that kind of was where I started putting some general concepts together for what eventually became Head2Head. So I had the idea for Head2Head back in 2010, 2011. And the concept was trying to take fishing more mainstream. And that's where I come into comparing it to these other sports, right? So biggest thing that people notice with Head2Head is all of a sudden it's a 5-hour fishing tournament.
Yeah.
Well, where's 5 hours coming from? Well, I looked at, again, I love sports, but the longest sport there is that I know of is a baseball game, right?
Yeah.
And a 3.5-hour baseball game can really drag on, really drag on. And I love baseball. Like, I am a baseball nut. I love it, but I don't have the attention span to sit there and watch a baseball game for 5 hours. You know what I mean? Or 4 hours or whatever. It's crazy.
People complain at like 2.5 hours. It's like, well, this is too much for me.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So then I started looking at fishing tournaments. Well, fishing tournaments are 8 hours long. And I'm like, I love fishing, but I can't. Who's got 8 hours to put down whatever they're doing, not cut the grass or not hang out with their kids or not do the honey-do list or whatever and watch a fishing tournament for 8 hours? I mean, I love fishing and I get exhausted by it. I just can't do it. So the 5-hour time frame came from it was a split between the 3.5 hours of a baseball game and the 8 hours of a fishing tournament. That's where the 5-hour match times came from.
I like it because it's a way, you mentioned sitting and watching fishing. I'll watch a bunch of it, but I'm that in and out. Like, I'll watch for an hour, 45 minutes. I'll step away, do maybe mow the lawn, do this, that, and pop back to it. I'll kind of, check where leaderboard is. Something changed. Oh, I'll quick pop onto a live stream. I'm that kind of passive in and out of things, but it's a way to take – I'm still kind of present to some extent through the whole thing. But, yeah, to just sit, like, literally stare at the screen for 8 hours, I'm with you. I don't think anyone could do that.
So in the thought process, I was looking at it going, well, a 2.5 hour, 3 hour fishing term is just not going to work. That's just not how fishing operates, right? Like,
yeah.
I had to, in looking at all these other sports, I had to say, okay, this is why I feel like it's successful for the NFL or for Major League Baseball or whatever. How do I make this work in fishing? Because if I go and I say, hey, we're going to have this 3-hour fishing tournament, everybody in the fishing world is going to look at me like I'm on drugs, right?
You're very easily going to have many tournaments where nobody catches anything.
Oh, 100%. So I looked at it and I said, okay, 5 hours is the time frame we're going to start with. And it really seemed to work where people are – the number one thing that I'm hearing constantly from people is it's just so addictive to watch. And I feel like it's addictive for a number of different reasons. But number one is the timeline. The time frame forces the anglers to make decisions faster than they want to make decisions. Mm-hmm. And then when you're forced to make a decision fast, one of two things are going to happen, right? It's either a great decision and you're going to be extremely excited about your decision, or it's going to be a dumpster fire. Well, dumpster fires make great TV.
Yeah.
So by forcing anglers to make decisions faster than they want to make them, they no longer can sit on a bite and try to grind it out. They have to catch fish. They have to catch fish right now. And that's where every fish counts comes in, because so within Head2Head, every fish target species, so for the Pro Walleye series, what we're talking about, they have to be 2 pounds or bigger. So where the 2 pounds came in is I didn't want people just catching a bunch of microfish and having that count, because that just gets boring to watch.
You could sit on that bite all day.
Yeah, exactly. But that's not, there's a fine line between catching a mature fish and catching, the little dock fish, or get on a school of males out in the river channel and just going to town on them for all day. So that's where the 2 pounds kind of came in, is that's a 17 to 18 inch fish, typically, depending on where you go. That's a quality walleye no matter where you are. And I felt like that allowed the true best anglers to kind of come to the top of the cream of the crop kind of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the 2 pound came in. Well, then that led to Dinkfest, which is kind of funny. It's got a funny name to it, but it kind of became a thing is because of only being 5 hours, a tie is an actual thing that can happen, right? Like,
I think
there's a chance.
I think I
Sorry,
remember
go ahead.
last year, one of the headed tournaments that I had caught up with, that there was a tie. I think it was both guys actually blanked in the 5 hours, and it came down to, was it a coin flip or?
Yep. And coin flips are dumb. So and some of this stuff is like, you think you try to think about everything, or you've thought about everything, but all of a sudden the scenarios pop up and you're like, whoa, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
like I didn't see this one coming, right? So Dinkfest became a thing. So what we do with Dinkfest is we'll fish, the timeline's 5 hours. If the match is a deadlock tie, and what I mean by that is we track big fish, number of fish, and as we're going throughout the day. So if it's a deadlock tie, meaning we both have 10 pounds, our big fish is both 5 pounds, and we've both caught 5 scoreable fish, for instance, we're 100% deadlocked where all the tiebreakers are even tied. We go into what's called Dinkfest, which basically means all the weight limits drop for the last 2 hours. Trying to allow these guys to, or these anglers to come up with something on the end. And it's kind of interesting where all of a sudden it's a whole different strategy that comes into play.
Yeah.
And we've seen it where a really tough bite, all of a sudden an angler will start blocking off his dinkfish spot because he knows, or he's pretty confident it's going to go into Dinkfest. And it's kind of an interesting way to break the tie where, you know what, dude, if you can't catch a legal size fish in 3 hours, all right, we're going to force you to make your match interesting. Is basically, again, trying to come back to how do I keep people engaged in something that's fun to watch for 5 hours, right? So this is where all those decisions came from, is how do I keep people engaged long enough to make this interesting, right? So that's kind of a part of the scoring system. Then I turned it into, okay, so how do I go from a standard fishing tournament, which is, 100 boats, let's say, leave the dock, and the top 10, move on to day 2, or the top 50 move on to day 2, and then you kind of wheedle down the format from there.
Yeah, like every other format kind of does.
Yep. Like, how do we change that to make it like what people are accustomed to? And everybody knows about March Madness, and everybody knows about the NFL playoff system, and everybody knows about how those systems work. And I said, well, how do I get that into fishing? How do we put a tournament bracket style into a fishing tournament? So that's where we started playing around with this bracket format of actually seeding anglers, and everybody loves to play the bracket games, right?
Yep.
So that brings a whole fan interaction standpoint that other fishing tournaments don't have. It brings in the whole seeding deal where you now have underdogs based on their seeding, or you got a 1 versus going against an 8, or whatever the case may be. And it makes the first 2 days mean something, but then now if I get into the bracket, it's anybody's game. So how we run this is the first 2 days, all 32 anglers fish of the PWS, the Pro Walleye Series. All 32 anglers fish day 1. All 32 anglers fish day 2. The top 8 combined weight after day 2 move into what we call the grade 8 bracket. And then we seed those anglers 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, and 5 versus 4. So what that allows is it really, day 1, day 2 allows you to kind of play that game. The anglers can all see where they're at on the cut line. It creates some really great storylines where one angler's already in on day 1. He had such a huge day on day 1. Now he's all pre-fishing on day 2, where you got anglers 8, 9, and 10 all duking it out trying to get in the bracket. It just creates a lot of different dynamics going on. From a commentating standpoint, gives us a lot to talk about.
Yep.
But from a fan standpoint, there's 3, 4, 5 different things all happening at one time, which I think creates a lot of interaction and interest into what's going on.
When it comes to formats, Major League Fishing, I think, kind of changed the game back a couple of years ago when they switched away from the whole, catch, cull and carry basically style tournament to the, catch and release and weigh. And again, kind of like you guys do, every fish matters. But I really like that you guys did that aspect of making it the bracket, because as much as it is trying to make a cut line, and the drama that you can get along, amongst guys right along a cut line, to have that bracket aspect really changes it well. And then that you've got, instead of guys competing against, to some extent the whole field, but really also competing against one particular person. You just got to get past that guy. It doesn't matter if some other angler caught, a bigger bag than everybody. As long as I get past my guy, I can survive.
Well, and that's sports, right? Like I said before,
Yeah.
I'm a sports guy. You have to win today. It doesn't matter that I was 5th yesterday. Like, that's just not good enough. You have to win today. And that's what sports are. And that's why I think the viewership of sports is so high, because any given Sunday, right? Or any given Friday night, and if you're into high school football or whatever, it doesn't matter what the records were coming into this game. If we win this game, we win. It doesn't matter. And that's the part that I loved about sports, that I think everybody loves about sports. My team is the underdog. We have no shot beating this other team, but what if we do? And if we make that, if my team pulls off this miraculous comeback or pulls off this feat of beating this top seed, I want to be watching that. Like, I want to be a part of that history, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I think the head-to-head really changes fishing, because I'm going to watch. My guy doesn't have to beat the other 30 guys like you're saying. I've got to go up against David and Goliath or whatever the case may be. But I leave the dock with a 50-50 shot. As an angler's viewpoint, I leave the dock 50-50, and if I can't bet on myself, well, why am I even doing this, right? So,
well, and we all know, as anglers, everyone's got different strengths and weaknesses, and each and every day is different. And a lot of sports, I think, kind of compare the same way. You look at baseball. You could have a team that just, they're mashers, but then you get against a really good pitcher, and that's a match that, gets them. So you got, someone that fishes this particular way, but the weather and the conditions don't allow them to fish the way that they like to fish, but the other guy doesn't, fishes. So it really, like you said, equals the field. And I think that's a really interesting wrinkle to it. Yeah, no, I 100% guarantee. I have got some stuff coming that. So, you want an announcement? This has not even been made publicly. This will be the first time it's been announced publicly. We can break things. I'm all for breaking anything. Let's do it.
All right. So, this is the first time. We're going to announce it next week. We're live next week in Lodi, Wisconsin for the second stop of the PWS, and we're going to be announcing this. We are going to have a fan-voted All-Star event in September.
That's cool.
So, the fans are going to get to vote, 100% fan vote. It's going to start in June. All the information will be coming. We're still working out some details. But how we're going to work the All-Star event is the top 8 anglers based on fan vote are all going to be seated in a bracket. They are going to know where we're staying, but they are not going to know where we're fishing, and there's going to be no practice for any of the matches.
Love it. I absolutely love that.
Well, here's the next step. Every match is going to be on its own lake. So the day one, we're going to go out. We're going to be on 4 different bodies of water. There's going to be the 2 anglers. So the real flex for head-to-head fishing is anglers, once you get into the brackets, anglers do not need to be all on the same body of water. I only need to be on the same body of water that my competitor's fishing against. And those other 2 guys are fishing on a different body of water. And with the bracket being I win and I advance, if I win with 2 pounds and he wins with 42 pounds, we move to the next lake or the next stop. It doesn't matter what we did yesterday. And there's been a lot of confusion from the fans about that concept of fishing, because fishing has always been my weights carry forward to the next day.
Yeah.
Where, again, sports, and I keep going back to that, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but I think it's very important for people to understand the why behind all these decisions is, if I score, let's use football, for instance. If the Packers and the Bears play at Lambeau and there's a blizzard, and it's a field goal fest, and the Packers win 6-3, and then they're playing against the winner of Atlanta and Carolina, and they're playing in the Dome in Atlanta, and they put up a combined 84 points. Well, you know what? Atlanta's got to come up to Lambeau if Green Bay had home field or vice versa. It doesn't matter what the score was of the last game, because the conditions were completely different in those 2 scenarios, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where these multiple lakes, I think, is really where head-to-head starts getting cool. So back to the All-Star event. So day 1, we're going to be on 4 different lakes. Day 2, the winners are all going to fish on a whole separate body of water. We might regurgitate some lakes for some of the loser bracket type stuff, just to keep it kind of easy or whatever. But the goal of the event is the winner will win on 3 different bodies of water in 3 days with no practice on any of those lakes. They will not know the lake they're going to fish until the night before. So we fish 5-hour events, then we have an after show, which is a lot like your coach's show after a football game on a Monday night kind of a deal, where we bring the anglers in. The anglers are not allowed to watch any of the stuff during the live streams, which allows the anglers to kind of talk openly about tactics and what they're seeing and what they're thinking and why am I doing what I'm doing, those kinds of things. So we bring the anglers in after, and Andy Cleveland, the tournament director, sits down with them, asks them all these questions. So during the All-Star event, that night is when they'll find out where they're fishing tomorrow morning.
So they might have a little bit of time to kind of prep themselves and, maybe look at some maps or something and at least get somewhat of a game plan.
But that's it. I mean, they're not going to know going into it. I mean, they know where we're going to be in the area, right? So if they want to really prep, I mean, some of these areas we're looking at, there's 10, 15, 20 lakes that all contain fish that, you can't do that much prep work.
Yeah.
But when they get on the water in the morning, that's the first time they'll have a drive around period. That's the first time they're going to be on that body of water probably ever. And we're going to get to watch these fan-voted anglers break it down and try to figure it out.
That sounds really cool, really exciting. And, fans have their favorites. Whatever kind of format of fishing you watch, everybody kind of has their favorites. I typically, coming from the bass world, I'm a big bass guy. I'm a big Brandon Polinick and Gerald Swindle type guy. I love those guys, always rooting for them. So I can understand where in any format of fishing, everybody has their favorites, and to see your favorite go against someone else's favorite, I love it.
Yep. So it's a good way to kind of spice things up, keep it interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, head-to-head fishing is about angler promotion. Anglers, I mean, I don't have a circuit without anglers. Anglers need a circuit. The anglers need to be sponsored. It's not a cheap sport, as I'm sure you're aware.
Right.
So the whole thing is about trying to give anglers a platform to promote themselves live on camera. Obviously, we need fans to interact, and that's why we do a lot of things. Like we've got the live chat, which allows the viewers to communicate with the commentators, which is super unique.
Mm-hmm.
I actually got that idea. So I've got 3 kids, and my 2 oldest are both into gaming pretty good. And I was watching them interact with like Twitch and all these gamers, and I'm like, huh. So you'll sit there and that guy just plays a game and he talks to you?
Yeah.
Yep. I'm like, really? When I'm watching these guys, there's 50, 60, 80, 100,000 people watching some of these big end streamers go to town. And I was like, that's pretty cool. So we opened up the live chat, and guys, the commentators actually answer questions with the fans, and the fans can ask questions, and certain times we'll actually relay those questions onto the angler through the camera guys. And it just creates a whole different dynamic of a fishing tournament where I feel like the reason we get that comment that, this is so addictive to watch is it's just so interactive with the viewers.
That's exactly it. People like to be involved in what they're doing instead of just watching. When you've added that element that they become a part of the tournament, it's easy to become more invested in it.
Well, absolutely, 100%. I totally agree.
Now, with what you guys are doing and some of the other things, do you kind of feel like there might be a shift in the fishing industry, in the outdoor industry, with, again, like I mentioned, kind of the call and carry tournaments, maybe that becoming a thing of the past, or just more of the interactive aspect that you guys are really bringing in?
Well, I think the industry it's going to be forced to change. And I think you're 100% spot on with the whole catch and call type deal. I think those tournaments are going to be forced to wean themselves out just due to the pressures on the political stuff, right? Like, people want to keep good fisheries, and the way the technology is going in fishing nowadays that, bag limits I think are going to have to change. I think the local areas are they're so excited when we tell them about our format when we're coming to town, because the old school days of all of the locals hating the tournament guys because they're taking all the fish and carrying them 100 miles to the weigh-in and, all of that kind of stuff. And, these tournament guys show up to town and all this fancy stuff, and they take all my fish and move them and all this kind of stuff, right? So I think it's going to gradually happen. It's been happening over the last 10 years. There's been a lot of formats that have really started pushing the catch, record, release stuff, or the catch, photo, release stuff. There's all sorts of apps out there doing it now. There are anglers that aren't in love with it, but I think as time goes on, they're going to realize, like, hey, it's just so much easier to let the phone app or whatever call for me. I don't have to mess with keeping fish alive all day. I don't have to worry about live well pumps and all those other kind of thing that goes with that stuff. So I do think the tournament world is going to shift away from the bringing fish into the weigh-in. The negative part of that is it costs a lot of money to stream like we're streaming with 10 cameras on the water and the commentators and the apps and all this other kind of stuff. So it's, for the local little smaller tournaments, how do we still keep some kind of a local community interaction stuff so I can keep my sponsors without being able to live stream? I think that's going to be kind of an interesting thing to see change.
I like the fact that you mentioned before, Brian, giving anglers an opportunity to showcase themselves, because that's the biggest thing with anyone in the sport. I mean, I think you're not in the sport, you're not in fishing to be a millionaire to make, all this money. I think there's far more people that are just in it to enjoy it, but you still have to pay you still have to pay someone. So that's where sponsors come in. But how do you get sponsors? You have to have the exposure.
Correct. Well, and nowadays with social media, I mean, you could take all the pictures you want and you could post all the posts you want to post. How do you get through the noise when there's a million other people all doing the exact same thing you're doing, right?
Right.
So how do you get through the noise of social media without something being different? Well, and that's where, what the format is we couldn't just have another fishing tournament and stream another fishing tournament and make any kind of noise in the industry without being drastically different. Well, and anytime you come forward with drastic change, you're going to get some pushback, right? People naturally don't like change. It's just not in the human's DNA, I don't think. Like it's just not a part of what most people like. They like what they know and they like things to be consistent. And I'm not ripping on anybody. It's just human nature. It's just the way it is. But then there's certain people that are called change agents, and that's what I kind of call myself. Is I see things that are the same and I want to literally tear them down because it just drives me crazy doing the same thing over and over and over. And that's where I keep pushing the envelope with head-to-head. And to answer your question about the angler platform, how do you get through the noise? Well, if I'm the angler and I want to be a professional fisherman, I can either take pictures, I can do all the stuff everybody else is doing, or I can pay some more money and get on a platform that live streams it. And now it's up to me to perform, but you're going to have to perform eventually anyway, right? It doesn't matter if you're doing it the old school way or the streaming way. If you get on camera and you're terrible, nobody's going to care. If you
Unless
get on camera
you're really,
and you're
really terrible.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but you take a guy like Nick Schertz, who won our first event, and there's a lot of people out there right now that went, who is Nick Schertz and how is he not already the best fisherman on the planet? Because we just watched him annihilate everybody for 5 days.
Yeah, there's just no room for him in other places, and you're giving that platform. I think it's awesome. Like I said, I've been really excited.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What's that?
No, sorry, go ahead.
It's been exciting to watch it. I mean, last year I watched quite a bit, and you guys did both bass and walleye last year. Is there any thought of getting back into the bass world, or are you just strictly going to stay in walleye from now?
No, I definitely want to get back into the bass thing. For this year, we're just putting our focus into the walleye thing. We're in a league of our own on the walleye side. There's nobody that's even coming close to touching what we can do on the walleye side of the world. There's obviously a lot of competition on the bass side. Mm-hmm. I'm not against the bass side. I want to do it, but I think for us, it's just smart business to really focus in on the walleye side and really drive that home. And then we'll come back to the bass side of the world. I mean, I'm not against either one of them. I think the bass tournaments are awesome, but anytime you're in a new startup business, you got to kind of watch not stretching yourself too thin. And it's a huge production and commitment to try to run something like we're running, and just better off focusing in on one thing.
Outside looking in, that was my thought last year going into things. And then COVID came across, and it's like, boy, how are they gonna pull this off with two different species? This kind of new format, all these things, and then all these other restrictions on top of it. But you guys did a really good job given the circumstances, I think, last year.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's been a really interesting start for this. Like I said, I had the idea in 2010, 2011, and then I started the Reel Shot that we talked about a little bit in the beginning, and that took up a long time. And then I was into coaching and won a state title in football. And this whole time, this idea never went away. And we started my own podcast for the Reel Shot, and I brought it up one day. And a whole bunch of people that were listening to the show chimed in and was like, what, you need to do that. You need to do that. And I was like, okay, well, I started putting the pieces together, and then I had to figure out, how do you stream? I didn't know anything about live streaming. I didn't know anything about live production switching and all this other kind of stuff. And so I started putting that piece together. Well, then the hard part was actually getting the first round of anglers to fish. was because the concept was so new.
Yeah.
When I was going to these guys and I'm like, hey, there's penalties, which you've kind of seen in Major League Fishing or whatever, some of this other stuff, but the time limit and the bracket and a lot of the anglers were like, man, this is the dumbest idea I've ever heard.
It's back to the we don't like change this thing. This is too different. I'm not in.
Exactly. Well, what I ended up doing was I ended up having to pay a bunch of those guys to fish those first 2 events. And that was in the fall of 2019. I ended up actually paying a lot of their entry fees just so I could get the first initial 16 anglers to fish. And when it was over, I had 16 anglers that all had changed their minds 100% about the format and about the platform. And they were all like, holy crap, like this was the most intense thing I've ever done.
You didn't pay for 16 anglers to fish a tournament. You just bought 16 advertisements.
It's 100%. You're absolutely right. I bought 16 affiliate marketers that are out there now going, you need to fish this because this was completely different than anything we've ever fished before. The adrenaline level, knowing that everybody I know is watching me succeed or fail, all of those things, again, that you get from playing regular sports when you're in high school or whatever. The reason that guys like you and I stay competitive is to scratch those same itches.
Mm-hmm.
Those itches don't go away. We're old now and we can't play the same sports, so we got to find a new way to scratch it, right?
That is so true. So true.
Well, that was a Brett Favre thing, right? Like, then again, I know you want to talk about head-to-head fishing, but I do think these things all relate. Was, you know, he was here and he was gone and he was retiring and he was coming back, and everyone was like, well, why doesn't he make up his mind? They said, because you don't understand that coming out of that tunnel on a Sunday, you don't get the same feeling when you drive your tractor out of the garage to cut the grass.
Right.
It's just not the same thing. And, you know, I had the same question people ask me, like, well, why do you donate all that time coaching high school football? I said, because I'm still on the field.
Yeah.
You're in the stands, and I still get to be on the field and be a part of the game and the excitement of the game, but I don't wake up with sore on Saturday morning. You know what I mean? So,
absolutely. You mentioned the tournament Lodi next week. Now, if people want to watch or get involved or even compete in head-to-head in any format, how would they go about doing that, Brian?
Yeah, so the best place to go is H2HFishing.com with the number 2. So H, the number 2, fish, H, fishing.com. All of the information about the upcoming events are on there. The Walleye League information is on there. We can talk real quick about the Walleye League. What the Walleye League is basically our feeder system for the future of the Pro Walleye Series. So it's a much like if you're familiar with the Bass World, where they've got the Bass Nation,
yep,
and then they've got the Opens, and that's how you get to fish the Classic, and that's how you get to work your way in. You know, if you really want to make a goal to be an Elite Series angler, that's your route.
Yeah, your clubs, your BFLs, all that.
Yep. So that's what again, none of that exists in the walleye world, because everything in the walleye world is basically teams. Everything's a team thing. Even the pro side of other walleye circuits, it's a pro-co kind of a format, where head-to-head is you're all by yourself. You're making your own decisions. You're running the boat. You're netting your own fish. Everything's on you. So there was no like feeder system to get these guys, right? So we ended up inviting 32 anglers for the first couple years here that they have, and then the Walleye League is where a guy like yourself, let's say, that wants to become a pro walleye fisherman, this is your way to kind of work your way through and kind of work your way up the ladder.
That's awesome.
And then have you ever looked into the Walleye League stuff?
I've not personally. I'm such a bass fisherman is my biggest thing, you know, in my world. And I mean, my latest endeavor that I'm going down the road of, I mean, not to make it about me, is kayak fishing. I'm really starting to get into bass kayak fishing.
Nice.
Very
cool.
That's kind of where I want to go and compete. And it's something I think is in the bass world. I think the next big thing. I think
it's a lot cheaper to get into it.
That's exactly why. I think it's far more accessible for so many people. And, you know, kind of like with, you know, you having a great format, I like the format of how that is too, that, you know, it's not like a bass boat. You can just 70 miles an hour, you know, zip from side to side of the lake. So the fact that you can trailer and move, and you can have, you know, hundreds of people all fishing one lake, but never see another angler. And it forces you to kind of pick apart an area a little more. You got to be really, you know, focused on a specific area or a specific way you want to fish. You can't just jump and run around. So you really got to think about it a little more. And I think that is a cool wrinkle to bass fishing, that I'm liking that challenge.
Yeah, no, I actually use the Bass Kayak guys as examples for the walleye guys all the time, because within the walleye league, again, it's all fishing solo.
Yep.
Well, the walleye guys aren't used to that yet.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, so with the league part, we've got bigger tournaments. There's 100, 150. They're more standard tournaments than they're all catch, photo, release tournaments, right? Because you just can't put 100 cameras in the water.
Yeah, no.
So for the regionals and the opens, they're all more standard formats than their catch, photo, release type formats. And then I'm getting a lot of pushback from anglers going, well, I can't take a picture by myself. And I'm like, why can't you? Well, this and that, whatever, back to the change thing. And I'm like, dude, I said, there is guys in a kayak, taking a picture of a bass and letting it go all by themselves. And did I mention that they're in a kayak? You can figure this out.
The lads definitely have a lot less equipment. You have to worry a lot more about conditions.
Oh, I mean, you know what I'm saying? So I use the Bass Kayak thing all the time as an example of, if a guy in a kayak can take a picture of a bass by himself, you can do this in your 19-foot walleye boat.
Absolutely.
Just making excuses. So real quick, back to the Walleye League. So the Walleye League allows you to fish through your club formats and qualify for the regionals. From the regionals, we're taking a percentage of those that move on to nationals. What the national level is, and this is where it really starts getting interesting, is the nationals are we fish a lot like the Pro Walleye Series now, where we fish the top 50 boats days 1, day 2, and then we go to the brackets on day 3, 4, and 5. That's where the bracketed anglers now are qualifying to fish the Pro Walleye Series the next year. And then the actual winners of the brackets are moving on to what we're calling the Shield World Championship. The Shield World Championship is actually going to take the top 8 anglers from the Pro Walleye Series Championship and putting them against the top 8 anglers from the Nationals into a 16 angler bracket, where in that Shield Championship, the 16 angler bracket is going to be 1 through 8. It's going to be all the Pro Walleye guys out of the Pro Series. And then anglers 9 through 16 are going to be coming out of the Nationals. And that will be one big monster duke out where we've truly got seeded, bracketed David and Goliath matchups, and there will be upsets. And, you know, eventually, I mean, it's going to be really cool. And that's set to happen in 2023, actually.
You got Joe Schneider from Kaukauna that could have, just started walleye fishing and luckily got through and got in. And that's amazing.
And from a platform standpoint, I believe, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's like if an angler goes through the regionals, through the nationals, and into the Shield, and he wins the Shield, he will have 72 hours of camera time, I believe is what the number was. I'd have to go back and do the math, but I believe it was 72 hours of camera time. That's more camera time than any fisherman on planet Earth has ever had, ever. Other than the guys, like you said, Swindle, and the guys that have their own TV shows and those guys.
Yep.
But for an up-and-comer to come through the league, to qualify to get that much camera time for couple $1,000s in expenses and entry fees and whatever is extremely inexpensive. And you are now the biggest name in the walleye world in a very short order.
That's really cool. Like I said, that's why I wanted to get you on to talk about it, because I thought it was a really cool and exciting new thing, and I look forward to seeing where it's going to go. And I think this is going to be huge. And, we touched on the changes in the fishing format world. I wanted to get back to a bit on the Real Shot, because, at the end of the day, you're the owner and CEO of this awesome, bait tackle outdoor store. And something else that we've talked about on our show here and on the podcast was the supply chain shortages. And, as a shop owner, how can you speak to, the challenges of the last year of supply shortages of, just getting product in the store?
Yeah, it's been brutal, I'm not going to lie. My buyers have been doing an absolutely awesome job. We're staying as stocked as we can. People got to get back to work at some point, man. I don't know how else to sugarcoat that. You can't, between just, warehouses not shipping, manufacturers, people aren't making products. I think this is going to go on for another year or two. It's just such a huge machine. When I talk about the machine being just the world economy, right? And with what COVID did to overseas and shut down the U.S. for a year and all this stuff, we just can't survive this for too much longer. It's going to really start hurting. It's already started hurting small businesses.
Yep. It's
only a matter of time before it really starts to hurt the medium-sized businesses like myself. obviously your larger businesses will hold on a lot easier.
I think even
but
they're
that's
having
not
challenges.
What makes,
Well,
right, but that's not what makes America what America is. It's the medium and small businesses that drive the country and create most of the jobs and the new jobs and stuff. And at some point, it's unfortunate, but we just got to get this country moving again, and people got to get back to work.
Yeah, it's just been such a struggle to find certain things. It's just like even the big businesses to find them. It's like, oh my gosh, that's where I turn to looking at the smaller to medium, the things that people don't, some people don't think of. Your local shops,
right.
Of sometimes they'll have some of the stuff, but even more of a challenge because you don't have the huge push of supply chain that the big people have.
Right. No, it's tough. I mean, we've got suppliers that used to fill at like an 80% fill rate, and now they're filling at like 20%.
Wow.
And they're trying to kind of spread product around, and it's been tough. And I mean, getting rods hasn't been that hard, but getting reels has been a real struggle. Just all the parts and components and all those little pieces that people don't think of that all have to be manufactured somewhere, and a lot of that takes people to operate. And once that's all shut down for a year, it's going to take a while for this to kind of get back to functional again.
What would you say in the last year was the most popular kind of product or thing that people came looking for? The one thing that was the hardest to keep, stocked at all?
Oh, by hands down, firearms and ammo.
Besides firearms and ammo, that's pretty much the given. I mean, it's crazy to walk into a Fleet Farm, or any other store and just immediately know that any kind of ammunition is completely it's so weird to see it's like walking around looking for toilet paper still.
Yes. Oh, 100%. We got a pallet in a week ago of 9mm and some other stuff, and it was gone in 4 hours.
Oh my gosh.
It's just we can't get it fast enough, and it's gone immediately. And we're limiting customers to 1 or 2 boxes depending on the caliber.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still going that fast just because we're just some guys that are trying to hoard it obviously don't like that we're doing that, but we're trying to kind of spread it as much as we can. But even with the limits on certain calibers and stuff, the stuff's just gone. It's literally impossible to keep.
Now, what would you say was the one thing that you'd probably give credit to of how you guys, kind of survived the last year and plan to continue to survive forward as the store itself?
We worked nonstop tirelessly at trying to find product and trying to work our suppliers and getting us what they can. And like I said, I can't thank the guys enough in the buyers that are doing just an outstanding job of trying to stay on top of that as much as we can. Throughout this whole process, we actually grew into a brand new warehouse. It's about 3 times the size of what we used to have, and we're not able to fill it as fast as we wanted to fill it, but we're filling it slowly, and guys are doing a great job making decisions on what to buy and what not to buy. And the customers have been just awesome supporting the local business here, and we've actually seen quite a bit of growth in the last 2 years. And
it's good.
And I think a big part of that is Head2Heads has been a huge marketing engine for us as well.
Yeah. Would you say majority of businesses walk-in in-store or a lot more online?
About 50-50. I think you've got certain people doing. I think the big push has been the in-store pickup orders have really increased. I think that that was something that's always been there, but I think COVID obviously really forced people to learn how to do it or learn that it's everyone's got different levels of technology experience and comfortability and all that kind of stuff. So the in-store pickup thing and online inventories that we have and stuff like that have really taken a foothold where I think that might have taken a little bit longer without COVID. Where now people were forced to do the in-store pickup thing for a while or whatever, just due to the virus and all that kind of stuff. And now they're like, well, that's really kind of nice. I can just do that over my lunch hour and I drive over there and pick it up on my way home kind of a deal. So
100% with you on that. And the one thing, I'll say, I mentioned that I love your website with, the Real Shot. It's so easily searchable. I love being able to see whether something's in stock or not, because to me, that's the ultimate frustration of going into a store looking for something and not having it. I'd rather just know that you don't have it and then, okay, what else, just kind of be able to figure it out without being having that frustration,
Yeah. Oh, just the time saving. I think people are busier than ever, right?
Yeah.
If you have kids, your kids' schedules are busier than ever. They're doing more than they've ever done. And then you got homeschool stuff. Some schools didn't go back as soon as other schools. And then work's busy and now the whole work environment changed and more people are working from home. And I think there's a lot of jobs that honestly might never go back to the offices,
100%.
quote unquote, because there's just no need for it, really.
Yeah.
And businesses are realizing that there's some cost savings by not having to have people in the office, but the work's still getting done and all those kinds of things. And all of a sudden now with having the online inventories, I mean, there's certain stores that I will not go to unless I go online and see what they have first. Like, I just won't do it. Like, why? I'm going to save myself 40 minutes of driving if they don't have it. You know what I mean? So
100% with you on that. And that's how I've found, we talked about that, on the show here, me with, Wags and, Tasker, their co-host, a part of it is they're more of the, like, I just want to go into the store and look and touch and feel. And maybe it's just because I'm younger that I've fallen into, I'm okay with doing the research and knowing things on my own and just knowing whether you have it or not and not wasting my time.
Yep. And within our world, there are people that come in and want help and they want some expert advice, and that still happens, and that's what we're here for. But there's so much information available online between things like Head2Head Fishing, where I can watch anglers fish for 5 days and learn more than, if I've got the time to watch it, I can learn more about how an angler breaks things down and make changes and different bait colors and certain things in 5 days than I used to learn in 5 years.
Oh my gosh, yeah, the old days of reading the Field and Stream magazines, and you get like maybe one nugget of advice, you'd have to dig through the entire thing to get, Yep,
and it's live, right? So I could watch Nick Schertz dominate the field, and I could literally go out that night and I can catch fish like he was catching fish right now. I don't have to wait 6 months for a post-produced TV show, or I don't have to wait a year for a post-produced TV show that all of a sudden now is airing at 6 o'clock on Saturday morning and, or whatever. So it's live. The information's current. It's right now. It's all of those things, and I can go make this happen, right? So I think that it's so much easier now for anglers, a new angler, to learn and advance so much quicker than they used to be able to do it, that it's really going to change the industry fast.
Well, I think driving sales of specific, just looking at fishing baits, I think last year the biggest one that steps out to me that I guarantee you guys saw at the Real Shot was the Berkeley Max Scent.
Yep. Oh, Berkeley Max Scent, the Ripple and the Rippin' Wraps is the other one that. It's there again.
One
guys
tournament.
Are catching. Oh, sorry. Yep. Go ahead.
It took one tournament and like shelves were empty.
Oh, instantly empty. We had in last spring we had our first river event, and the guys were all fishing Rippin' Wraps, custom colored Rippin' Wraps, and we literally had stacks of orders. They're flying off the shelves. It was insane how many Rippin' Wraps we were selling. And again, it's happening right now. The anglers can't hide anything. It's something where the average guy can be like, wow, that looks really cool. I literally can see the color he's throwing. I know how deep he's fishing because he told me. I can see how his cadence is, or his reel technique, or his whatever. I mean, there was a guy that was fishing last year. His name was Jesse Brady, and he's actually in the field of 32 on the Pro Walleye Series now, that literally changed the river forever because of what his cadence was and how he was reeling the fish, how he was reeling that bait in was just different from everybody else. Nick Schertz did the same thing in the Detroit River. You go to Detroit River, and it's historically a vertical jigging, deep water, hand lining kind of a bite. And all of a sudden, there's this guy pitching plastics, casting paddle tails shallow, and he's just crushing these fish. And people are like, what? Like, I fished here my whole life, and nobody's ever done that before. So it's just really cool to see things change and evolve. And like I said, I really love the fan interaction and being able to teach people to fish. If you look at it the right way, it's entertaining, but it's also a 5-day seminar, and it's really cool to watch it kind of happen.
That's awesome. I think you said you got a great product in Head2Head. You've got a great store. Nothing but success, and I'm glad you took some time to kind of explain to us and talk about it. You mentioned that it's going to be Lodi, Wisconsin River for the next professional walleye event this coming week. What are the rest of the events throughout the summer? Yeah, so we're in Lodi. I'm pulling up the schedule right now. I think I'd have it memorized, but I don't. You know what? We've all got so much stuff going on. I mean, I've got 17 balls in the air at all times, too. We all get it. Yep, so starting May 17th, we're in Lodi, Wisconsin. We're fishing the Wisconsin River and Lake Wisconsin. After that, we're going to Minnesota, June 7th through the 11th, and we're fishing Mille Lacs. The anglers are so excited for the Mille Lacs event. If you're not familiar with Mille Lacs, it's got a very, very strict slot limit on it. And with our format, we don't take possession of any of the fish. So we don't have to worry about catching unders and all this other stuff. There's going to be some giant fish caught in that tournament. The anglers are extremely excited for that.
The fourth stop is on the Mississippi River, Pool 2, out of St. Paul, Minnesota. There again, that's another slot limit. That actually, Pool 2 is all catch and release only, I believe. So this is one of the first only major walleye tournaments to ever fish that area.
Yeah,
so that'll be pretty exciting.
Not often you hear Pool 2 mentioned ever.
Right. Well, that's why. So they're pretty excited about that. Event 5, we're going to go out to Nebraska. We're fishing Lake McConaughey. Guys, that's a very unknown place from the Midwest, and I think the anglers are going to put on a real show out there. That's August 23rd through the 27th. So that's the last regular season event. So the anglers are fishing all year for Angler of the Year points. Obviously, there's payouts and all that stuff for all these events. But after that 5th event, we're going to end up taking the top 16 anglers out of the Angler of the Year points, and they will be fishing our championship event on Lake Chautauqua in New York. That's October 11th through the 15th. And that whole event is actually a seeded bracket of 16 anglers. So they fished all year long. That will be where we get our true bracket of 1 versus the 16, the 2 versus the 15. And may the best anglers survive and win it. It's win or go home, the whole event, all 5 days.
Yeah, some of that cold fall fishing, no doubt.
Yep. And from what I've heard with Lake Chautauqua, it is a mini Lake Erie. It is full of giants.
Awesome stuff. Well, real quickly before we wrap things up and let you get on your way here, because you're in the Fox Valley, and this is something that came up on a show a few weeks ago. We were just talking about the health of different fisheries. And so you mentioned earlier, we were talking about the locals complaining about guys coming in and ruining fisheries. How do you feel about the future of the Lake Winnebago system? Because I've heard and seen a lot of people have a lot of complaints about that system.
Yeah, just my 2 cents on it. I've actually, I don't know if you saw, I put a post out on Facebook a week or so ago kind of asking people what their opinion is. I think the system's kind of been overrun by sheephead. I think the sheephead need to get under control. I think the walleye population is suffering because of that. I mean, the sheephead's an ultimate predator fish. They eat everything. There's a separate train of thought where, the sheephead are providing a forage base for the walleyes, but I just think there's too many of them, and that's really got to get under control, in my opinion. The walleye weights specifically are way, way down. We had 3 events last year 3 head-to-head events last year on Lake Winnebago, and it wasn't good. The fishing was terrible. A lot of people were pointing at the fact that head-to-head's artificials only and we don't allow live bait. Well, the week after our 3rd event was the giant Battle and Bago tournament, and we were actually filming that event for Battle and Bago, and those guys were all using live bait and crawler harnesses and the whole spiel, and the fishing was just as tough for them. It's just, I think something's got to be done. It's an awesome fishery. It's just not managed correctly, in my opinion. I think it's managed for, numbers and not quality, and I think that the system could probably do both. I honestly believe it could be one of the best systems in the country if it was managed differently. I think that they need to start looking at a slot limit during the spring to try to protect some of the spawners. And
I am such a proponent of slot. I almost feel like every one of our game fish we could have slots for. I feel like it's such a good way to manage a system, to keep the big breeders within the system, and to allow the smaller ones to continue to grow into a decent size.
Well, and the way the technology is going now with live scope and all this stuff, side imaging, I mean, the fish just can't hide like they used to be able to hide. I think slot limits on Winnebago need to happen. I think bag limits, I know they already changed that down to 3, but a bag limit changing is going to take a really, really long time to take hold. I think a slot limit and the bag limit would make it happen a little faster. And I'm not a biologist. I'm just going over, I've been fishing Winnebago system my entire life. And, everyone's always like, oh, look at this great class 18 inchers. They're going to be 24s in a couple years. It never happens because they all get fried up.
They're going to end up in Joe's cooler and in the fryer while he's sucking down Bud Lights.
Yep. No. And you know what? I am not against, this is my big beef with, I am not against guys taking fish home. They bought a license. That's their right. Go do that. But on the same token, I'm not against those guys pointing the finger at the tournament guys, saying the tournament guys are the problem. Well, the tournament guy he bought his license.
Yep.
He's entitled to take home his 5 fish or 3 fish or whatever every day. So if he's taking those 3 fish that day to a weigh-in, what's the difference of you taking your 3 or 5 fish home to fry them up. Like, what's the difference? So I think it's kind of an everybody's got to be in this together kind of a mindset. I don't think it's the local guy that fries them up versus the tournament guy. I've never bought into that argument because the tournament guy is not fishing for free. He bought a license too.
And paid a lot more money for entry fees into the tournament and all, and equipment.
And typically your tournament guys, they're letting their fish go all week. If they're practice fishing for 3 or 4 days before a derby, they're letting those fish go because they want to catch them again on Friday or Saturday or Sunday. They're not taking those fish home. So you could make the case that if a local guy and a tournament guy both fish for 5 days, the local guy's taking more fish out of the system than the tournament guy. And I'm not pointing a finger at anybody. I just think that it's got to be an all hands on deck kind of a thing, that we want a quality fishery. And I've kind of started taking some steps to putting some stuff together to try to make that a little more known, especially about the Winnebago system.
Yeah. And, as far as you talk about, taking home, to me, a walleye over 17 doesn't taste good anyway. I'd rather keep that 16, 17, everything else goes back.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, back to technology, fish are getting easier and easier and easier to catch. Everybody's learning so much faster on how to catch fish. All of those things I think need to be considered when we start talking about bag limits, possession limits, and slots and those kinds of things where, 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't as easy to do, and it took a lot longer to learn how to do it because you couldn't jump on YouTube and absorb 30 years worth of knowledge in 3 hours.
Yeah. Valid point. Well, appreciate the time. Appreciate everything. Again, H2HFishing.com is where you find everything on Head2Head Fishing. TheRealShot.com, everything about The Real Shot. Appreciate it, Brian. It's been awesome to chit-chat and get to know a little bit more about, Head2Head Fishing and help share the message for you.
Yeah, anytime, man. I really appreciate you having me on. Hopefully I didn't spin around too much and drove a little bit of the point home, but definitely, like you said, check out H2H Fishing. I don't think you're gonna regret it.
Absolutely. From watching it last year, I can vouch for just exactly how exciting Head2Head Fishing is. If you haven't checked it out, I suggest you do. H2HFishing.com. Thanks again, Brian Keller, also owns The Real Shot. You can go to TheRealShot.com, check out the awesome bait and tackle store that they have there. But thank you for tuning in to the show. Of course, aside from this podcast, we have a weekly radio program that can be heard on our affiliate, 97.3 The Game in Milwaukee, which also can be found on the iHeartRadio app. So if you got a chance next Saturday, check us out on there, or be looking for a new episode of Tailgate Talk coming right here. I am Sean Ritter. You can find me on socials at On Air Ritter. That's RIDDER. The entire show can be found at On the Tailgate. And with being springtime, we're going to talk turkeys, and we'll have the whole gang back together. Paul Wagner, Eric Tasker, and myself next week right here on the show. Until then, have a successful and safe week. We'll talk to you the next time right here on Tailgate Talk.